Welcome, it's the live coverage of this year's Classics races starting right now here on Eurosport. Milan-San Remo, 294 kilometers running along the coast. What they call the most beautiful race in the calendar. Well, the Italians would, wouldn't they? It runs through Italy, they love this race. And over the last few years, it's become a sprinter's paradise. Will that man there in the rainbow jersey, Tom Boonen, be the man to watch? Or will Alessandro Petacchi, coming fresh out of a stage victory in the Tirreno Adriatico, be the one to take victory today? And like I say, 294 kilometers starting this morning at the Via della Chiesa Rossa in the Piazza Salambrario in the middle of Milan, and before running south towards the coast and Savona, and then further on the southwest towards San Remo, hugging the coastline all the way down. We are now within 50 kilometers of the finish. We're in the Three Capi now, these small hills before we get to where the race will really kick off. The Three Capi, Capi Meli, Capi Cervo Mimosa and Capi Berta. There is a breakaway of 8 riders up ahead. They had a maximum lead of 11 minutes 30 seconds. They're now down to under 2 minutes, and the peloton being driven along by Quickstep and Lampre. Sitting beside me, twice winner of this race and a man who knows all about the beauty and the pain of this race, Sean Kelly. And Sean, we've had what we consider pretty normal in the Milan-San Remo. There's been a breakaway that's gone up to about 11 minutes, but the sprinters team's not going to let them get away, are they?
No, certainly not. And you know, we have a few very good sprinters, the likes of Bone and Petacchi, who are the big favourites, and we see the team of Petacchi here with Nines controlling the thing. So certainly the breakaways have no chance of staying away, and as you said, it's come down a long ways from there on the 11 minutes mark to inside the 2 minutes now. So it's just, you know, the end for them guys. But you know, somebody had to control it on, and I presume the team of Bone and Petacchi has been controlling. As we see, the team of Bone and the Quick-Step riders are riding on the front at the moment, so they have been doing quite a lot of work during the day.
These are two of the riders who went away early on. That's Mirko Allegrini from Pararia, and that's Unai Echeverria, the Venezuelan rider from Euskaltel. Just a quick rundown on those riders then. Daniele Contrini, who did so well in Tirreno Adriatico, winning the mountains competition just last week for LPR. Unai Echeverria, you can see in your shot there. Staff Shearlings, the Belgian riding for Cofidis. Ludovic Auger of Francis de Geur. Kel Castrum of Liquigas. Mirko Allegrini, the man in your shot at the moment. And his teammate Sergei Madviev, who's done an awful lot of work. Madviev, a fantastic time trialist, won at stage in the Tour of Langkawi earlier this year. And Gianpaolo Chuela, who broke away 2 or 3 times last week in Tirreno Adriatico. He's running for Barlow World. Incidentally, I said it last week, but if you're looking back in the peloton, Barlow World and Aquad Saponi looking very similar. Look for the blue helmets and the red and black bikes for Barlow World. They're all in an all-red strip. This is where the confusion comes in. And Aqua Saponi riding black De Rosas and riding red helmets. That's the way you'll tell those apart. Well, Sean, this is a race that, I mean, really, the racing doesn't really start, does it, until the last 50k? So those people who are joining us across Europe here live on Eurosport, they're getting the best part of this race today.
Yes, well, we certainly are. This is where it all happens in the last 50 kilometres. When you come to the Cappas, as we said, that's when the race really starts, you know, to hotting up. But for the lads out in front, of course, the 8 riders, they have been going hard all day, and they have done a lot of work. And you know, the riders always hoping for a long breakaway, but it's a long time in Milan-San Remo since we've seen one succeed now, and once again today, it's not going to be the case. As we see once again, like the sprinter teams controlling it, so it's going to be down to the action on the final climbs of the day, which really will be suppressive, where we see the big action really, you know, coming to the fore. We'll see the big riders going to the front, and I think from there on, like, it will be crazy from there on, because this race is quite crazy. When you get to, you know, the Cappas, first of all, it starts to heat up, but when you get to Cipressa, to get onto the climb and on the climb itself and the descent, really crazy stuff. And the Italians are the most crazy because it's their race, and for them, if they can do well in this race, well, it makes the year for them.
Yeah, everybody wants to win this if you're an Italian, don't you? A lot of non-Italians, of course, want to win this. So is the mystique that surrounds this race. Tom Boonen, desperate to win this race. He's going up against Alessandro Petacchi, of course, wearing the #1 on his back because he's last year's winner in the Milan-San Remo. Well, we'll look at the favourites in just a minute as we watch Unai Echeverria And Mirko Allegrini just trying to make a sprint for it. They've only got 16 seconds over the chasing group, though. But I think it was Eddie Merckx who once said this is absolutely everybody for himself once you get to the last couple of climbs, unless you could completely control it. That's what happened last year with Fassa Bortolo. They managed to keep it all together. They wouldn't let Bettini go away, and Kasheshkin, remember, riding for Credit Agricole then, he tried to go away, and the Vinokurov tried to get away on the Poggio, but it didn't manage. Well, there's still a chance somebody could escape in a shorter breakaway. We'll take a short commercial break, one of only two we're having. We'll see you later.
Was wäre, wenn Ihr Fitnessplan besser ist als Ihr Vorsorgeplan? Weil wir heute schon an morgen denken, können Sie jetzt und auch in Zukunft auf unsere individuellen Versicherungslösungen zählen. Zürich, because change happens.
Was ist Ihr CO2-Fußabdruck?
Was? Wie bitte? Meine was?
Ich habe keinen blassen Schimmer. CO2-Fußabdruck?
Und wohin misst man das?
Könnt ihr euch das vorstellen?
Das weiß ich nicht.
Ich weiß es nicht.
Ich auch nicht.
Ich weiß nicht.
Noch nie gehört mein Leben. Oh Gott, jetzt habt ihr mich auf dem falschen Fuß erwischt. Keine Ahnung.
Nee, dann erklären Sie mal.
Da ist eine Menge drin im Dropkick. Die Stars der Champions League. Die heißen Themen der europäischen Ligen. Internationale Klasse auf dem Weg zur WM. Macher und Meinungen zum Fußball.
Dropkick 06, jeden Montag 18:30 Uhr bei Eurosport. Dropkick 06, das Beste vom Fußball.
Welcome back, and one of the neutrino riders hitting the deck. These are delayed pictures of Mori, I think, hitting the deck and looking as though he's beginning to suffer. It's all getting a bit mad there. Everybody trying to jostle, to tag onto the back and get in the right place for these attacks. Well, I hope he's okay. That doesn't look very good, does it, Sean? He's on the deck, and they're calling for medical assistance. And that's Massimiliano Mori. I'm pretty certain it is. Here, let's see what happens. Does he clip a curb? Oh, do you think he's cut it too fine on that roundabout, Sean? It's a bit difficult to tell, really.
Yes, well, we see there when he went down, did he touch something here early on? He must have, because he went sliding there. We can see actually the mark where he slided along the road. So he touched the corner of the footpath, maybe on the left-hand side. I was wondering, did the rider cross him? Because when you come to the big roundabouts, sometimes the rider in front of you hesitates, and one moment he's going to go for the left, and then he decides to go to the right. And if you're, a little bit on the side of his wheel, he can take you out like that. But I think the rider touched the corner of the footpath himself there, and down he went.
Well, the roads on Milan San Remo, certainly post-war, in the last few years, have not been particularly better. Oh, another rider down. It is Mori, in fact. Oh dear, that's a nasty cut just under his right eye there. You can see it swelling up like mad already, and just the look on his face, a mixture of pain and disappointment, and I just can't believe this has happened to me with the last 40-odd K to go. All Italians want to do well in this, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's hurt his fingers a little bit there as well. Well, luckily he's sitting up and talking lucidly to the people around him. That's always a good sign. As I was saying, the roads aren't particularly bad here these days. Before the war, of course, it was a completely different kettle of fish. And that's one of the reasons that the Poggio was added in 1960, is because the roads had got so good that it just came down to a sort of sprinters festival. Everybody just cruised towards the end, and it was a mass sprint. So they added the Poggio in 1960 to try and break things up, allow another attack, and then again it was becoming more and more of a sprinters festival. So in 1982 they added the Cipressa as well to try and break it up even more, and they've done a pretty good job of that, haven't they, Sean?
Yes, well, it's it's been a big test for the riders, the Suppresso and then the Poggio right in the end. But as we've seen over the last number of years, the sprinters, certainly the last 10 years, the sprinters seem to be getting better on these short flat climbs and getting stronger and managing to get over them more the sprinters, let's say. So there are a lot of talk about in Milan San Remo about putting in another hill, and this year they were talking about it once again a number of weeks ago. Last year they were also talking about it to break it up a bit more, but finally we didn't get that hill because we have seen like quite a lot of riders coming to the finish here, 50 plus riders in the finish, and I think the organisers want to make it a bit more difficult to break up that. But I think it's good enough. What we've got at the moment is a very interesting race with the Suppress and the Poggio, and I think we should not change from the style we've got of race at the moment.
Well, we're still to see who can come out of the peloton. There's Paolo Bettini in the middle of his shot there. You can see him in the gold helmet. Had a nasty crash in Tirreno Adriatico last week on stage 3. The weather was really foul. He was complaining about the weather to start with, wanting that stage 2 be cancelled. And in fact, it wasn't just the race organisers who were cross with him. His director sportif was very unhappy with him as well, saying, you train all the time, and well, if you come to Belgium and race with us, it's like this all the time. What are you complaining about? Get out there and race. But a lot of riders were unhappy with the road conditions. What did you think? You saw some of the stages of Tirreno Adriatico with me, Sean. Italian road surfaces, it's a bit different here, but do you think they had a right to complain about the surfaces and the weather?
Well, I was following that, of course, and I don't think that he had really a big point there to put across and getting the stage cancelled. The weather was cold, but there was no such thing as snow on the road or anything, or there wasn't snow falling. So I think it was a good decision by the organisers. Of course, Bettini, he was in very good shape, and for him, not to have to do a day in the rain, which is always risky because crashes first of all, but also to get a cold and get sick. And when you're really in top shape, he didn't really need a lot of racing to keep him in top shape for Milan San Remo. So it suited him if the stage was stopped. But for other riders who needed more racing in the legs, well, they would rather do the stage in full. So it depends on what sort of shape the rider's in. I think that was Bettini's plan.
A little bit of politics there, a little bit of rider politics going on. Well, there was suspected as much. Kalilov, the guy on the far right-hand side of your shot at the top in the Kazakh National Road Race Champions jersey, he had a good Tirreno Adriatico, faded slightly towards the end, but he fancies his chances today. He's a pretty strong boy. Well, I guess it's about that time we should look at what's going to happen if it comes down to a sprint finish, at least, Sean, because there's a number of riders who could figure, isn't there? Obviously, there's Alessandro Patacchi, Oscar Freire battling it out. Tom Bonen will be battling it out for a victory, but there's a number of others could do something. Astalora, if he's in good shape. Uzoft, as we hear, there's at the finish there, there's a headwind against the sprinters. He could do pretty well in that. There's Alessandro Balan. He's done very well for Lamprey. You can see the Lamprey guys up towards the front. Even Paride Grillo, they've got the Panaria guys up the front. What are your feelings? What sort of sprint finish? If we come down to a sprint finish, who do you think is in with a good shot today?
Well, I think Tom Bonen is in very good shape in the Paris-Nice. He was really in great shape and much better than he was at this moment last year, and he did finish like in the top 10, so I would see him as being a very big favourite. But of course, when you come down to the sprint, it's always so little. If you get held in for a moment, you get boxed in, well then you can get pushed out of the sprint. So timing and a split second can mean such a lot. But when you look down to the sprints, of course, as you said, Patacchi, Bonen are the big ones, and then you have maybe Zabel, Freire, Bettini, Hushoft. So Hushoft is riding very strong. I think he's also a rider which is much better than he was other years at this time of year. And then, of course, you have some of the outsiders, as you said. But I think Freire is the one who can, sit in a wheel very well, sit in the wheel of Tom Bonen or Patacchi for that matter, and come off the wheel very well. And the forecast today is a headwind, so that's not the perfect one for Patacchi because he likes to go for a long one. And, with Freire around, that could be a dangerous one for him.
What about Robin McEwen? We hear he's cracked a rib as they're taking up some of the breakaway riders there. Ludovic Auger being passed, Truela being passed. There's Matviev and Contrini. And now, as we speak about McEwen, De Vita Monlotto starting to come towards the front. McEwen's, we hear, has cracked a rib. in the fall he had in Belgium earlier in the year, and finding it a little difficult to get to the sprints, but sort of coming into form. Last stage of Tirreno Adriatico, second place to Pataki, albeit a bike and a half length behind. But before we get to a sprint finish, of course, here in Milan San Remo, we've got less than 40k to go now. We're now on the Cipressa, and everybody trying to keep the pace really high, Sean. They don't want to let anybody nip away. There could be a classic counter-attack situation here, but Lampre really driving it at the front.
Well, yes, nobody going to nip away. It's very difficult to get away. You need, some very good, strong riders to be able to do that. And, the Lampre team, you always have teams who are riding on the front, and then there's other teams who are keeping their riders in a good position, because you have to get your riders into the top 20, 25 riders at this moment. So a lot of teams working at that, and that just drives the speed up automatically, because everybody is kind of moving up to be in the top 20, 25 riders, and it just goes faster and faster as we go on into the race from this moment.
Just look at the speed of this. Really is pelting along now with about 20 odd K to go. Well, very fast. Now just dropping off a little bit, but still Lampre at the top. This is 6k drag. Now this is where Bettini and Kasheshkin went away last year. No such chance of it this year. Bettini maybe not quite in as good a shape as he would, but I'd expect him, if he's feeling any good at all, Sean, to have a go on the Poggio. Maybe a couple of riders. I mean, you know about breaking away on the Poggio. So tell us, what's your game plan? If you were sitting next to Tom Bonin there in the middle of your shot, you fancied your chances today, Bettini's just ahead of him, where would you launch your attack now?
Well, I think for Bettini, of course, he has to launch an attack. He has to try and get away, because if it comes down to the sprint against Tom Bonin and Pataki and the rest of the sprinters, he's not really, good enough to beat those guys in a straight-out sprint. So he's going to try and get away, and I'm interested to know what the tactic of the quick step is, because certainly Bettini, if there's anybody going to attack, I think he will go with them, and hopefully hoping that break will go on, and then to go on to the finish with a small group, and in that he is very strong, because if it comes down to a sprint, of course, he will have to, prepare the sprint for his leader, Tom Bonin.
So we're on the Cipressa now, just 20 odd K to go. Running in along the coast, southwest. We've passed Imperia, which is the last big town. We've gone over the three Capo Mele, Capo Kerva, Mimosa, and Capo Berta. We're going over the Cipressa now, and just the Poggio to go. The Poggio much shorter, but a little bit more difficult and winding. And now it looks as though, so is that Pelazzotti giving it a go? No, is that Garzelli? It looks a lot like Garzelli knows. We'll have to see when we get down. Yeah, it is Garzelli. That's the typical Garzelli. Well, that's the characteristic Garzelli helmet he's got on. And they were saying, Magnus Bagstad was saying just this morning that although he's not been in particularly good shape, Garzelli is feeling in good shape. And away goes Garzelli, launching his attack. I wouldn't have thought it was his time yet, and that's Efimkin, I think, trying to go across as well from Bala World. We saw him racing hard in the Tirreno Adriatico, and Stefano Garzelli giving it a dig early here.
And of course, Garzelli, a rider who can, climb very strong, very explosive, and this is where he has to do it on the climbs, because again, if it comes down to a sprint, well, he has no chance of getting up in this race, not a chance of getting in the top 10 or 20 in a sprint. So for him, he has to try everything to break it up here and make it difficult for the sprinters. And I think he'll be hoping to get away with a couple of riders and maybe go on to the Poggio, and then see what position they're in then. But again, surprising that we haven't seen Bettini coming across to him, because I would be expecting him to be marking any moves on this climb.
Well, it's Garzelli still powering away. He seems to be outpacing Peter Rolich, the Austrian rider. He's a bit more of a sprinter who's taken his chance to try and go away. Garzelli tagged onto the back of him and then gone straight past, and I think he's got Alexander Efimkin trying to tag onto the back of him as well. Good move by Garzelli. Feeling strong. He's opened up, he opened up a reasonable gap on Peter Rolich, who's now being tagged back. Rabobank working hard on the front now. Cofidis as well. Bertognoni fancies his chances on the Poggio. He won a stage in last week's Tirreno Adriatico. And a lot of people start moving up towards the front. I think that's Schleck on the far left-hand side. Rabo will be keen to keep Oscar Ferrer up towards the front, because Ferrer looked like he's coming into form, was very strong at the beginning of Tirreno Adriatico, considering that he's had a very bad year last year, Sean.
Yes, of course he was out last year quite early with the problem, back problem, but he's in very good shape in the Torino, and I'd not be surprised if he would be the one who could pull it off today. We see the Rabobank rider Eric Decker, who was doing the pace setting on the front, and that will tell you something that Ferreira must be in good shape if he's starting to make the pace, and he'd make a steady pace, just not to allow Galzelli to pull out too much an advantage, and to keep the attacks from coming quick and fast as well. If you're somebody like Decker who can set the pace, well then it's a perfect position for Oscar Ferreira, because it will be a more steady pace. They won't be these sudden attacks up front of the group.
Well, Gerolstein is still sending men off the front, trying to put some pressure on, trying to go across towards Stefano Garzelli now. And still the peloton just riding tempo, trying to keep things together. Andrea Moletta, not a name you see up the front of a race very often, but a number of teams are represented in the front here now. Discovery have got a rider in there. There's Garzelli back in the fold. Bettini's managed to keep things together. Pozzato is next to him. A very useful man to have. It's all a bit tight and turn twisty here, and when it starts getting nervous, Sean, some of the less experienced riders really have to watch themselves, don't they, on these very tight turns when the speed is pretty high.
Yes, well, experience, is very important. That you don't make an effort too early, and just depending on what sort of rider you are as well. If you're a sprinter, like we talk about Oscar Ferreira or Pataki, put yourself in a position where you don't have to make too much of an effort when there's a little acceleration up the front. So in 10 or 15 position is a good place to be, because up front in the first 4 or 5 there's a sudden acceleration, and if you try and follow that, it's very difficult and hard on the body, and you burn up a lot of energy. So the positioning is quite important on this climb, and then as you get towards the top, of course, you move up a bit, because for the descent of the suppressor to be in the top 10 is very important. So the experienced riders will know exactly what position and where to be at any moment in the final 20 kilometers.
How important is it to be in that top 5 or 10, Sean, to set yourself up for an attack on the Poggio? If you're really going to go for that, you really have to be up there and take that descent above anybody else?
Well, of course, if you're going to go on the attack, first of all, depending on, again, the rider, what sort of rider he is, if you have to go on the attack and try and get away in a break, well, the suppressor is the first place to give it a go and see what the reaction is. But if you're a sprinter, you just wait on the suppressor. As I said, stay in the wheels, just move closer to the front as you come to the summit of the climb, and be in the top 10 at least for the descent, and then just go on to the Poggio from there. And there you have to take, a much closer, keep an eye closer on the race, because if there's a few riders going away, you have to try and go with them, because it's always dangerous on the Poggio. If a group get away and they get to the top with 15 or 20 seconds, well then it's pretty sure they can go on to the finish.
Well, riders being sent up the front, one after another for Quick-Step. CSC making a move. Now, this is the first time we've seen Tom Bonan up the front. I was just about to say he's been allowed to stay behind a little bit, and his teammates like Mazzanti and Pozzato and other riders, Nick Noyens was doing an awful lot of work earlier. They've been allowed to come to the front and do most of the work. Now, this is a double whammy situation, is it, Sean? You've got Tom Bonan, who's there for the sprint. He's also pretty strong up a hill. But if that all else fails and he didn't have the legs today, you've got Paolo Bettini just lurking there, as he often does, to launch an attack at the appropriate moment.
Yes, well, Bettini, of course, I think he will be the one who will go in the attack with other riders if the riders go. Certainly the Poggio, if he has got the form, but with his crash in Torino, that is the question: has he got it? Because he's been out for a number of days with that injury he had. He got some stitches, I think, on his knee, so he's off the bike for a number of days, and that can take effect of him in certainly a long race like this as we go to the end. And the Poggio would be so it'd be so fast after a long distance, he could pay the price for being out that number of days. But we see here the Quick-Step riders taking control of the race with Pozzato on the front, and as you said, Bettini very, very close in the wheel of Tom Bonan.
We haven't talked much about Alessandro Patacchi yet. Patacchi wearing the number 1 on his back because he won the race last year. Look how it's spreading everybody out, and a couple of Milram riders down the order. Well, they won't particularly want that. They've got Fabio Sacchi, they've got Marco Velo now, they've got Eric Zabel as well to help lead out Alessandro Patacchi if it comes down to that straight sprint. Let's pit them head-to-head at the moment, Sean. Tom Bonen and Alessandro Patacchi. Do you think Patacchi has the team advantage when it comes to dragging people to the line?
I don't think so. You know, I think they will have problems keeping a number of riders in there. That would be the problem for Patacchi. Of course, he has Zabel and a number of, you know, very good lead-out men, but I think against the quick-step riders, I think they are stronger in block. And as we see here at the moment, you know, we have a number of quick-step 2 to 4, so I think they have the advantage. But when it comes down to a sprint, of course, a straight-out sprint, well, then is the one who has the best legs in the last 250, 300 metres.
Well, it's still going to come to that. Less than a kilometre then to the top of the Cipressa. Then you saw that slow motion shot of Paolo Bettini. I don't know if you noticed it was just over his shoulder. Alejandro Valverde, we've not spoken about him at all. He's a bit of a chancer. He could do something on the Peugeot. I wouldn't be surprised if he launches an attack. And if he can stay away, he's got a fair turn of speed as well. We haven't mentioned him at all, but he's a real contender, isn't he?
Yes, well, there's, you know, quite a lot of riders when you go down through the list on the Poggio. If they can, you know, pull out a gap of 15 seconds plus, well, then it would be a very dangerous one if you get, you know, 3, 4, 5 riders all the top. So, and Valverde, I think, is a one could go for that because he is very explosive and he can climb really well, probably better than Tom Bonen and Patacchi and the other real sprinters. So I'd not be surprised if he got the legs, he will be trying to, you know, store things up and maybe pull a group away.
Paolo Bettini then on the front now, spinning those pedals. Always looks so effortless for Paolo Bettini. He seems to be able to put zip in his legs regardless of the situation. Now remember, if you're looking for Alejandro Valverde, he's in black these days. The new Casa de Pagna's team. Used to be Les Balears, they're still a co-sponsor, but all black with a big red block, or square block on the back of the jersey. So that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for the old Les Balears strip.
And we see Patacchi there, he's just behind Tom Bonen, so he's quite comfortable at the moment. And when you look at the group, we see the rear shot there, as we see now. A lot of riders, you know, going out the back doors, they say. We see George Yaxia from Liberty Securus having problems there. And when you see riders like that having problems on the climb, well, that tells you the speed is really high. And, you know, the quick-step riders really turning it on.
Now, is that... well, there's a number of interesting riders who could still do a few bits and pieces. On the downslopes of the Cipressa now, just the Poggio to come. Well, Matteo Carrara on the front for Lampre. Another man we haven't mentioned so far, Damiano Cunego, has not done the Milan-San Remo before. Just a learning year for him?
Well, yes, a learning year, but of course he will know the roads so well. I presume he has trained a lot over these roads, so that will be, you know, a very familiar country to him. But the race itself, I suppose, you know, he hasn't got the experience. But again, he's a rider who's going to have to try and, you know, get away in a groove on the Poggio, for example. But I don't know if he's in good enough shape at this moment because, you know, the early part of the year he takes a little bit of time to get into really top shape. So I don't think he's at 100% of fitness level at the moment.
Paolo Bettini doing a sterling job on the front, sending nice and quickly, nice and smoothly. Look out for that motorcycle, which is the motorcycles, for those people who don't watch much bicycle racing and you maybe have switched on and stumbled across us here on Milan-San Remo, it's true, isn't it, Sean, that bike riders, when they know the roads, even if they don't know the roads, could descend faster than motorcycles by a long way.
Yes, well, the bike, you can go down much better on the descent, and we've seen it on many occasions with the police outriders. The riders are able to come by him on the descent, and of course the cameraman, you know, he's sitting on the rear as well, and he's carrying quite a heavy camera, so for them it's a bit more difficult again to go down the descents. And we see Bettini had to slow down there because he was coming into the back of the motorcycle. And of course Bettini, you know, from his crash in the Torino, he's probably a little bit nervous because he had quite a, you know, heavy crash there at a very high speed. They were saying 70 km per hour, and he's definitely, you know, doing the front here. And when you're on the front, you're a bit more confident because you know, they're not the problem there of a rider, you know, missing a corner or something and taking a number of riders out. So he's playing safe on the descent here of the suppressor.
99 years ago this year, the first of these Milan San Remos was run. 1907, the first race. April the 14th on a Sunday, and it started off at the Perissimo Piazzale in the middle of Milan. It was actually, as so many of these things are, an advertising stunt for the town of San Remo. And I think it was the editor of Gazzetta dello Sport that was actually in San Remo on holiday in a bar, would you believe. He was approached by all the local dignitaries saying, we've tried all sorts of bits and pieces to promote our town. We'd like something new and exciting. And he said, well, what about a bike race? And they ended up with the longest single-day race in the world, looked upon as probably the most beautiful of the races in the calendar. Every Italian wants to win this, and that was the first run 99 years ago.
And back to the seafront, just after coming off the descent of the Poggio there. And this is a normal thing. We see riders looking around to see what damage have been done on the climb and on the descent, of course. And we see the Milan rider looking around there, I presume, checking to see where his leader Pataki is. And this is a moment when we see a number of attacks, and I've seen it before. And actually, some of the successful attacks have got away here. We see Fignon a number of years ago. He went away with Frank Masson, and he stayed away to the finish and won the San Remo. So here again, we see there's a little moment of, you know, who's going to do the riding, who's going to pull the group along at this moment. And often we see a group going away, as we see at the moment there's a few going in the attack.
Yeah, Logan Fignon, twice the winner here in Milan San Remo, both times in the last 40k on the back end of this road to the Poggio. Well, as Andy Schleck is the rider from CSC up at the front, taking on the pacemaking of this little group that's trying to break away from the main favourites. The guy who launched the attack, of course, Murenaut. And Andy Schleck has gone past him now. The Casse de Pagna rider has gone with him as well. Here's Marco Fertonani, the Italian rider, but running for a Spanish team, and they're always keen to get straight up there. Well, there'll be a lot of looking around now, waiting to see who's going to do the share of the work. They're going to wait for Pataki's team to do it. Quick-Step have been doing a lot of the initial driving along. Milram haven't done an awful lot. This gives a chance for some of these guys to get back on before the Poggio, and they're working very hard indeed. Fabio Sacchi, the guy in the Milram shirt at the front, doing most of the work trying to get it back. Cofidis, CSC, Casa de Pagna, they're all, Rabobank, they're all trying to get it back together. Haven't seen where Oscar Freire is, and I haven't seen a Rabobank jersey in the front 20, Sean, and I wonder if he's there. Doesn't look like he is to me. Maybe that's it, there he is there. Just as we say it, the director's wondering the same thing, I think.
Which is rainbow bands on his sleeves. And the interesting one here is we see Trenchi from the Quick-Step here. He's in this group, so you know, a very good sprinter. We've seen him, you know, doing a very good job for Bone and leading out, so a very good sprinter himself. So I'd be surprised if you know, the Quick-Step start pulling this one back. So it's up to the Milram team of Pataki to start doing the work here, because if these guys get organised, and as I said, they pull, you know, 30 or 40 seconds before they start the climb of the Poggio, well, then it could be a dangerous move here.
Well, actually, the guy who's gone across from Casa de Pagna, I beg your pardon, is Vincente Reines, and he is a very good sprinter as well. We've got two very fast men here, and they won't want these to get away. Reines, who won a number of races in Spain last year, was in a top quality form, sprinting early in the season. If he's in anything like that form this year, they will not want him to get away. They will not have forgotten it. And as you say, Sean, Guido Trenti, the Italian riding for a Belgian team with a US passport, also in this group as well. Koos Murenaut at the front, and Andy Schleck. Now he's one of two brothers, Frank and Andy, and they're both supremely talented, wearing the Champion of Luxembourg road race jersey there. This is a clever little group, Sean, and there's some danger men in here.
They certainly are, and you know, the advantage is when you have a teammate of one of the big favourites, as I said, with Trenty up there, that is a great advantage, because then the team of Quick-Step are not really going to do the pulling, and it could be the make of this break. And if they keep on working as they seem to be, rolling through quite well, then they could maybe pull out a nice advantage before they go into the Poggio. But again, on the Poggio, there's going to be unbelievable attacking out of this bunch, and it's always difficult to stay away unless you have these riders, or some of those riders who are very strong, who can climb the Poggio very, very strongly.
Mario Cipollini, he's been present in a number of races. He's knocking about the village and the start-finish areas quite a lot in the cars. We saw him at Tirreno Adriatico. I think out of this lot, Sean, the guys who've gone away at the front, I would favour Andy Schleck as the guy who's most likely to be the strong one on the Poggio. I don't know about you.
Via.
Yeah.
Get away.
Yes. Please, would you like to drive somewhere in the distance? I think.
Yes, and we see the case, the bank rider there just, telling the motorbike to get out of it. And of course, as you said, David Reyna is a very good sprinter also, and he knows that if it goes to a sprint, well, he has a very good chance. But yes, on the Poggio, I think Schleck would be a very dangerous one, because he's a very good climber, probably the best of the fours up there. So I think he will definitely, if they stay away and they have an advantage on the Poggio, he will try and go away before the top, because he has to try and get away from the other breakaway companions, because in the sprint I don't think he has a chance of getting in the top three.
We have got a time check on it, but you can see visually it's a pretty useful gap at the moment. Enough, Sean, to launch an attack on the Poggio. We saw they've gone through the roundabout, and I think the rest of the peloton, or the lead group, are going through now as well, but it's still a fair old advantage. Here we are. Lampre on the front again. Milram have got two riders up there. Fabio Sacchi was one of them. I would guess that Marco Velo is going to spend his time later on dragging up Alessandro Petacchi. CSC at the front as well. We've got a Telecom rider. And is there a couple of Bouygues Telecom riders coming on the far right-hand side as well? A little bit of discussion going on in the lead for Andy Schleck, trying to force people along. Of course, Trenty at the back is not going to contribute anything at all to this little breakaway, but Andy Schleck trying to play a useful little game, driving them on. He knows he's got a good chance if they get to the Poggio, and I think these guys are beginning to get it together now.
Again.
Well, of course, I think he's concerned that that the Milram boys are being dragged up by them.
Yes, well, he has a point there, because we see the motorbike there, we see an aerial shot actually, and the motorbike was only just 2 bike lengths ahead of the rider who was pulling the bunch along, and that is a great advantage when you're going along at this rate, and they are going at top rate at the moment. If you have that motorbike there, it conserves a lot of energy, and you can ride much faster on the front.
Well, heading up now towards the Poggio. All breakaway riders, including Guido Trenty, Reines, Andy Schleck and Koos Morenhout. Little telltale signs from the riders in here. Andy Schleck watching the other guys. I think he's going to launch something. I tell you what, Guido Trenty knows it. He's sitting on his back wheel. He's not contributing at all, understandably. There he is, right at the back, but you just saw him reaching down, adjusting the ratchets on his shoes, tightening them up, getting ready for any effort he's got to do. There's Alessandro Ballan, second in line. I think he's got a good chance. You have probably heard me if you were following Tirreno Adriatico. I'm a big fan of this guy. Very talented rider. Just beat Steve Cummins earlier in the month at Liguelia. And so he's won a major race this year already. And Ballan slipping to third in the Tirreno Adriatico, but held second for a long time. Gave it a good chance, and rode a very good time trial, in fact, as well, to try and stay up there. I was very particularly impressed. Beaten down by Jörg Jaksch, who's an excellent time trialist, and Thomas Decker. Decker is in this race, but was seen at about 150k dangling off the back. So I think the efforts he put in for Tirreno Adriatico just taking their toll on this Milan San Remo. Really not his race, though. It's down for Oscar Freire. He's the sort of man who could finish in this. But it is interesting, isn't it, Sean, that we haven't really seen many of the Rabobanks up at the front at all driving this along. It's definitely Milram, it's definitely Quick Step. Rabobank lurking there somewhere, but only 2 or 3.
Yes, actually, when we were looking for Oscar Freire, we had to go back a bit in the bunch to find him, but I did not see any other Rabobank rider. But at the moment we see one there close to the front, and you know, that's the way to do it, I suppose. You have to spare your men until the the final and going into the Poggio or on the Poggio, and if you can do that, it's a good thing to do. And I think that would have been the tactic. But we did see them on the Suppressi area. They were having setting the pace actually on the front of the bunch and keeping things you know, rolling along. When we see Garzelli attacking, we see Decker actually, who was earlier on the race, he was reported hanging on the back, but he did come to the front. But when you see him riding on the Suppressa, it proves that he's riding for Freire and he's not playing his own car today.
A little bit of a dig coming in from Frédéric Guidon. Guidon involved in a long breakaway. Here we go. This is the beginning of the Poggio. Now talk us through this climb, Sean. You've escaped on here before. You've launched attacks on the Poggio. What do you have to do?
Well, depending on you know, how you feel, first of all. I remember my last Milan San Remo, I decided that I was going to sit in about 10th or 15th position and you know, allow the attacks to go off the front, and there's always riders who will chase it down, and that way you're not too close where you get the sudden acceleration. It's a little bit less when you're back in 15th position, and you know, I just rode the climb like that and conserved a lot of energy, and then just before the top actually moved up, and going into the top, the first corner on the top, I was in about 3rd position, and I just made my descent from there and went away from everybody else, and actually caught up to Argentine with a kilometre to go, where the previous one I was one of the big favourites and I felt so strong I was attacking on the Poggio. So it depends on, you know, what style of rider you are, how good you are on the day, because if the legs are really good and you know, you need to get away, if you're not confident in the sprint to beat the other big sprinters, well then that's what you have got to do.
Well, at the moment it's Koos Moornaerts on the front, Andy Schleck just behind him, Minerenes, and then right at the back Guido Trenti contributing nothing, and absolutely fine in doing so. That is his job. Eric Decker was the man on the front of the peloton here. All the Rabos have now moved up to the front, or 1, 2, 3, 4 of them anyway. Oscar Freire will be dragged up towards the top. This plays into the hands of everybody else, of course, because if Rabobank want to shut this down, then Milram don't have to do any work, Quickstep don't have to do any work, and they've already got one man up there. Well, look, really coming back fast now. Well, we thought there might be an attack. Will there be a counter-attack? Is it a place you can counter-attack on the Poggio?
Yes, definitely will be a counter-attack, and you know, there's riders here who's got to go on the attack because you know, not any chance in the sprint, and they have to get away on the Poggio and pull out the gap, and hopefully you know, to get down the descent and to go on to contest the race with a small group, hopefully. And then there's the sprinters who want to stay in there and just get as much help from their team. And you know, the Rabobank riders, actually, as I said earlier on, we did not see them. They were back a bit further in the group, but now there's a few of them there and they're turning up the pace. So, you know, Oscar Freire must be feeling okay, because the orders will be coming from the Director Sportif through the earpieces, and you know, they're starting really to stir it up as we see Schleck actually going to attack. As you said, this is what he has got to do.
Yeah, we were contemplating on which one of these four would be the strongest on the Poggio, and we suggested it could be this man here who's launched his attack off the front, Andy Schleck. Bjarne Riis will be in the car for Milan San Remo, his Director Sportif urging him on, telling him where to attack. Riis, of course, a very canny rider, lived in Italy for many, many years. He knows this race like the back of his hand. And Andy Schleck going for it. He's really nailed his flag to the mast now. He hasn't got any other choice, has he, Sean? He's just really got to go for it as fast as he can up to the top, and then just keep the pressure on the downslope.
Yes, well, he's riding very strong, and you know, when he attacks from those riders, he's been doing a lot of work as well, and he just goes away from them. But his line into the corner hasn't been great. We see the first corner he went into after attacking, you know, he went very wide and had, you know, to turn off on the on his pedaling for a little while, and we see him there once again, another corner just went very, very wide, and that's not a good thing. When you're really on the limit, you have to take your corner, get a very good line, and you know, not to lose your rhythm at all if possible, and that's something which he's not doing. He's having problems on the first two corners. We see them when he went away. And at the moment we're going into the easier part in the middle of the climb. It levels out a little bit there, and this is a little bit easy as you go up onto the last kilometre and a half, where it kicks up once again.
Schleck nailed his flag to the mast. As we've said, he's gone for it. He's not the most smooth of rides up here, but he's giving it a go. I must now let me just think. I might well have got this the wrong way around. If I have, I apologise. I think this is actually Frank, isn't it? Keep getting these two mixed up. Andy and Frank, two brothers. This is Frank, I think, Schleck, but this is the CSC Schleck anyway. The Luxembourg champion. Giving it all he can. He has to. He's dedicated himself to attacking here. He's beginning to look as though he's suffering now. Now here comes one of the attacks out of the peloton. And the pace is really now hotted up. There's somebody's gone off the front. I think it's Balan. I'm sure it's Balan who's really... It is Balan who's gone for it, and he's a real danger man. Pozzato straight on his wheel. Will not let this man get away because he's launched a fearsome attack. He thinks he can get across, and they're not going to let him. He's really strung everybody out, though. And straight by him is going... I think that's... is that Astaloa? I think Astaloa is trying to tack onto the back as well for Barlow. Igor Astaloa, who's been in fine form, wearing number 31. He's gone past Schleck. So Schleck out the back door. Balan has launched an attack. Pozzato is on his tail. And Igor Astaloa has seen his opportunity. He knows how strong Balan is racing. He's been with him for the last week. This is a good move, Sean.
Yes, it is a good move, and certainly a good move by Pozzato, because once again, you know, the Quick Step are playing the card of sending riders up the road and not having to do the work behind. And you know, Pozzato, of course, you know, a very strong rider and quite fast in the sprint. We've seen him getting some very good places in bunch sprints, and if this one goes on, well, you know, he would be a very dangerous one in the sprint.
Well, this is a good threesome now if they can keep it together ahead of the rest of the peloton, because Astaloa is a good sprinter. And Akos Sapone coming across now. I think that's Nocenti. Yeah, he's had a pretty good spell in Tirreno Adriatico. A lot of riders using Tirreno Adriatico to tune themselves up for Milan San Remo.
As we start the descent here, this is the first, the left-hander. It's an interesting one out to see what the advantage have, and we see the group there, you know, the riders coming across, but the main bunch we see is quite a bit off, so you know, it's going to be maybe 10 or 12 seconds, so it's an advantage which if they ride well up front, really make a good descent, they could just about hold off.
Well, I think it was Floyd Landis rode this race last year for Phonak and fell on this corner, but it can catch a few people out. But Balan has launched the attack up the front, and I think, oh, somebody right straight into the wall on the far side of your picture. Let's hope there wasn't anybody very important, but there we go. Great attack by Balan. We know how well he's been riding in Tirreno Adriatico. He's got the bit between his knees, hungry for a major win. And as I've said before, I really rate this rider. Astaloa's got across now on the descent, but Astaloa is a good strong rider. He's been riding really well. It took him absolutely ages to get across to Pozzato and Balan, and Pozzato looks as though he had difficulty hanging on to Balan's coattails as well. Five kilometers to go then. 290k almost covered so far, and it's all going to come down to this last 5 kilometers. On the Poggio, once again, the customary attacks have gone off. Frank Schleck, the Luxembourger, came out of a group of 4, including Reines, a very good sprinter, and Guido Trenti and Koos Morenhout. He went away early on the Poggio, but it was about halfway up, 3/4 of the way up, I'd say, probably. Alessandro Balan from Lampre absolutely launched himself out the peloton, and none of the really big favourites coming back to him at all at the moment. Igor Astaloa saw how well he'd been performing in Tirreno Adriatico and has tacked onto the back. The rider from Nocenti from Akos Sapone has come back to him on the downhill as well. Good riding by Nocenti, and Frank Schleck at the back still trying to work very hard. I know that Bjarne Riis really rates Schleck as a rider, and more riders coming back across Esquetal. That's Samuel Sanchez. Well, he had a great Paris-Nice, didn't he, Sean? Samuel Sanchez, and he's come across to this group as well. Very handy group.
Yes, it certainly he certainly had. He was riding very strong in the Paris-Nice, and of course not a great sprinter, and but certainly, you know, seems to be coming back. And it's interesting to see how far the group is, the main bunch is off, because it's lined out as we see. They're in single file, and it's been pulled along very fast, because we actually see splits between the riders. So quite a hot pace being set in the chasing group, or the chasing bunch, what's left of the bunch.
Well, we've got about Frank is a little bit tired now. I think he's hanging on for dear life. Is Schleck. Have they been caught napping? This is the question, Sean. We've still got a Bonin up near the front, and the Milram boys beginning to do some work on the front. I think that's still Guidon in there for FDJ. The Lamprey rider is just policing things. There's a rider up there for Uzoft. I don't think it is Uzoft, but it could be, you know. We haven't seen a really close shot, but he's on the wheel of Tom Bonin. Well, the riding style looks a bit like Uzoft from overhead. Have this little group, especially Balan and Pozzato here, have they caught, and Astaloa, have they caught the main bunch napping, Sean?
Well, I don't think we can say catching it napping, because, you know, they went away on the climb and the last 2Ks of the climb of the Poggio, and you know, when you do that, well, that tells you that they're riding very strong, and you know, they've got the advantage going into the descent. But will they work here when they come onto the at the bottom of the Poggio, which they've just arrived on the big road once again, and here it levels out, and this is where they really have to pull well together, otherwise they will be swallowed up immediately by the big chasing group.
Well, just a little check of pace by Balan and Pozzato, not wanting to do anything together. And look at this, they're absolutely bearing down on them with the full force. There's Alessandro Patacchi, third back. Eric Zabel doing a lot of this. Marco Velo doing work on the front. Work coming now from, is that Uzoft has got across? I'm not sure it is, but I think that's Sebastianino who's trying to get across to this lead group. They're all looking at each other. They cannot afford to do this. Come on. Anybody who wants to get away has really got to work hard. I don't think it's anything likely anymore, Sean. They're going to eat them up as soon as look at them, aren't they?
Yes, well, it looks like that they're definitely going to get swallowed up here, because they're just, you know, attacking each other as such. And if they continue on doing that, they have to work together, because we see, you know, the 3 riders from Patacchi on the front, and there's going to be more who comes to the front. The surprising one, the teammate of Hushoff, the way he went to the attack there, not the thing to do. He should have ride with the Milan riders and close it down for Hushoff, because he has a very good chance if it comes down to the bunch sprint.
Extremely good chance if it comes down to the bunch sprint. Watch out for 84 on his jersey if you're looking overhead. 1K to go. Oh, it's really strung out. These guys have really had it. Now, I think, who was it? I think it's the Escatel rider who's still working very hard on the front. Samuel Sanchez. Sanchez knows he can't sprint, so he's got to give it everything he can, and they're all just going to come back together. Less than a K to go. Sanchez, Pozzato, Frank Schleck's got himself back in there. Alessandro Balan, Astaloa, and Nocenti is winding up for an early attack. Nocenti's gone on your far left-hand side of your screen. Then Pozzato's gone with him. Balan's still looking at people. Now the Rabobank boys have come, bringing Oscar Ferrer up towards the front. Ferrer will be 1, 2, 3rd, 4th back. Nocenti has stopped. Pozzato's going for it alone. It looks like Pozzato's going to go for it himself. They played the old 1-2. Now Tom Bonin would love to have been in there, but it's still Pozzato out of the front. They're going to have to work very hard to get to him. Elmiger on the far left-hand side. Pozzato's got it in his pocket. I'm sure he has. Nobody's going to catch him now. Filippo Pozzato takes a win for Quick-Step. Tom Bonin with his hands in the air. And Patacchi coming in after that. Well, Bonin the first to go and congratulate Filippo Pozzato. They sent him up in the break. He was with those 5 leading riders, and they worked really hard to stay away, and then they all started looking at each other. Pozzato played an excellent game, Sean. Some cat and mouse, some intelligent riding, and managed to stay in the right position to take advantage of everybody looking around.
Yes, well, yeah, he definitely unbelievably strong, because the way he rode off the front there, with the rate the group was coming back, breathing down his neck, to do it like that, you know, you really have to be powerful, and he made it look so easy. It's unfair, really, but you know, very, very impressive, and he can do that very well. And you know, he did it just, you know, better again today, the way he rode off and just, you know, held Patacchi off in the sprint, and he was, you know, coming full flight the last 150 metres, but Pozzato was really, you know, really burying it and going for it, and just, you know, held on very, very strongly.
That's an extraordinary piece of riding. Nocentini was beside him, just checked his pace, and look at the guys. I think that's Pataki from a long, long way out, trying to catch Pozzato, but just creeping up and now making no difference at all. Super strong. Bonin in 4th place. I think the Liquigas rider who came in 3rd will probably have been, well, it could have probably been Paolini, I would guess. But what a ride by Filippo Pozzato. Well, it's been a long time coming. He's been trumpeted as a wonderful rider for such a long time. He works for other people, and he's had a pretty good season so far. He won a stage in the Deutschland Tour last year. He's won the Giro di Lazio. Of course, he won the ATW Cyclassics last year. They looked across again next to Paolini, looked at each other, and the two of them were 1-2 there. Paolo Bettini giving him all the encouragement and support that he does throughout the year. And it's that Italian journalist again, always wears the same glasses, same hat, same coat, and always gets in there first of all. That was a terrific ride, and really coming of age now, this rider, Sean. Look out for him a lot more in the future. And he can ride the cobbles as well.
Yes, and just the interviews coming over, the most beautiful moment of my life. And I've never really talked about this Milan San Remo.
Well, he's going to talk about it now.
I was a stronger, I was very strong.
He certainly was. Well, everybody absolutely made up for him. He's so popular in this Belgian team as an Italian rider. Just look at the way he was away. Pataki absolutely giving it everything, and Bonin on his heels. Pozzato had it in the bag from such a long way out. Alessandro Milan on the far left-hand side, well, he messed about and lost his chance, having launched the attack on the Poggio. Ferreira just on Bonin's shoulder. Is that Rebellin? I think that's Heinrich Hausler from Gerolsteiner coming into the mix, and he's ahead of Tor Uzoft as well. So Heinrich Hausler, we didn't get a chance to talk about him. He was one of my outsiders, but not to be for Heinrich Hausler, the German come Australian. What a fabulous win for that man. He thoroughly deserves it as well. He works hard all year for other riders. He got his chance to get in the break. He very cleverly got in there. And just look at the amount of power this guy puts down in the last 250 meters. That is a classic finish to Milan San Remo. And the first time in a while, Sean, that a breakaway on the Poggio succeeded all the way to the line.
Yes, well, if you could call it succeeded, you know, they were, I think everybody kind of, you know, had thrown the towel. They said we're caught, but Pozzato was the one who, you know, really took the bit between his teeth and went for it. But again, you know, the way he did it, and very powerful, and being up there on the break, and to do that in the last number of 100 meters, it tells you that he was really on a great day.
Well, it went past Nocentini looking over his shoulder to see where the hell everybody else was, and Pozzato just got his head down and went for it. We know he can sprint in a bunch as well. He did it at the ATW Cyclassics in Hamburg last year, and Pataki forced to lead out by himself. Zabel had done all the work to try and shut the break down. In fact, had done that. He was the guy on the front for Miller and did all the work.
Sempre creduto in me e sono contento di averli ringraziati.
Well, just waiting to confirm the 1-2-3, but no doubt about the winner. Filippo Pozzato, Alessandro Pataki, and then we think either Tom Boonen or the Liquigas rider, I think, is in with a shout as well. Nothing from Tor Uzoft today, left it too late and in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as we said, very strange chasing tactics by Sebastianino, trying to shut down the break. I suppose they wanted to get it back together for Uzoft to take a decent gap. Paolini was the other chap in the top four, I think, for Liquigas. We'll take a short break. Try to get soon.
can't read this. Can you read this?
I can't read this.
What's wrong with this?
It's in black and white.
Black and white's what's wrong with this?
Should be in color.
That is better. How'd you do that?
Xerox Color. It makes business sense.
Enter a new era with 3D. Dassault Systems. See what you mean.
Do you want to get closer to the stars of the Sony Ericsson WTA Tour? Sony Ericsson is giving Eurosport viewers the chance to win some fantastic prizes, including exclusive tickets to the Sony Ericsson WTA Tour Championships in Madrid and the latest Sony Ericsson phones. To be in with a chance of winning these amazing prizes, please go to eurosport.com/Sony Ericsson. Good luck.
As it once was.
I told you the story. I remember always when I race, I have the leathers, and below I have the yellow t-shirt. And I say,
Why yellow?
Why yellow? Because I start with yellow and I win with the yellow. So I say, okay, I like to use the yellow. But one day I go to the Grand Prix and I forget my yellow t-shirt. I say, oh no, I start to cry and say, oh, today is very bad. And I put another one, and you won. Black and or white, I don't remember, and I win. So after that time I say, okay, I don't care. I use a yellow or white, it doesn't matter.
With City cycling shoes.
Well, let's have a look at this finish of Milan San Remo. Again, it was Nocentini who went off the front for Arcos Saponi, looking behind him for somebody to go with him, and Filippo Pozzato had latched onto the back, saw his opportunity, and just drove towards the line. Such a strong ride because the sprinters teams had to come from a long, long way back, and Pataki saw that he had to go for it. Well, it must have been all sorts of thoughts going through his mind there. He just wasn't making any ground on Pozzato by the end. Bonan raising his hands and losing out on the possibility of third, I would think. Luca Paolini, I think, is the Liquigas rider. And let's just see if he comes around the outside. I've got a feeling he does, but Bonan quite happy for his colleague Pozzato. Oh no, he doesn't get third. Oh, Luca Paolini gets third over Tom Bonan. And Napolitano takes fifth. Well, for the first time in a long time, it hasn't been a straight sprint here at Milan San Remo, with Filippo Pozzato taking it from the remnants of a break. Sean, just put yourself in Pataki's shoes for a minute. What goes through your mind when you know you've got to launch the sprint out by yourself and you've got a man up the road who's pretty quick? What goes through your mind?
Well, you know, what can you do? You just have to just go for it, because he was in the position where he had to just do it, and hopefully that, Pozzato would not be able to hold on out there. But, you know, as we said, very strong Pozzato, and a very good sprint by Pataki, because he laid out from a long way and, you know, nobody else came over him. So that tells you how strong also that that he was.
Yeah, Tom Bonen raising his arms in triumph for his teammate Filippo Pozzato, who loses his third spot as Luca Paolini. The liquid gas rider comes around the outside of him and takes just snatches it from under his nose. Well, this man has won a lot of single-day races. He's become a bit of a single-day specialist. Won the Giro Liguria and Liguelia last year. And he won the ATW Cycling Classic, as you remember, in Hamburg. And the Giro de Lazio last year. So won lots of very, very good one-day races, but the first time this man has won what they call one of the monuments. This is the opening classic of the season, and he's now stepped up to a whole new level of his career. This will go down, you can talk about this with his grandchildren, and he will always be remembered as one of the riders who won Milan-San Remo. Mario Cipollini congratulating him. 2 fourths in Tirreno Adriatico last week, so he's in pretty good shape, but 5th in Het Volk, so he's been hitting the ground running, so to speak. Fabulous win for him, Sean.
Yes, well, for an Italian, you know, what better can you get?
He will be remembered for the rest of his life as the man who once stayed away from a rampaging pack. Filippo Pozzato then wins the Milan-San Remo race, and what a great finish it was from us. Goodbye.